League of Women Voters, and welcome to the panel on Mesa County and the policy agenda that was created through a survey conducted by a collaboration with the Voces Unidas de las Montañas and the firm that they contracted with. We have a distinguished panel that we're lucky to have with us. These folks are busy, as we all are. Well, maybe not all of us, but anyway, being retired changes your view on life. But these folks, the idea here is to see what the survey has found about the state of Colorado regarding issues and bring it home and see what it looks like at ground level from folks that are immersed through their lives, through their professional experiences, etc. So that's the function of tonight's event. What I'm going to try and do, and this is very dangerous, any of my former students will tell you, don't let him multitask. But what I'm going to try to do is show this, the part of the policy summary that we're going to be talking about. But I'm going to be kind of picking out pieces of it and reading them to you. And then we're going to ask our panelists to respond to these. I just wanted to point out that the League of Women Voters is nonpartisan, but we do believe in supporting certain issues. Our mothership is very much involved in issues. And tonight we have an important issue that you are welcome to talk to Peggy, who is in the back. She has a petition for an initiative to get put on the ballot to insert the protection of abortion rights to the Constitution of Colorado. And they're working hard to get the signatures they need. I think 140,000 are needed, and they've got about 14. No, I'm kidding. There's more than that, but they've been working diligently on this. And if you want to sign, if you're a registered voter, you're welcome to do that. So some of the areas that we're going to be discussing are economics, housing, reproductive health, undocumented immigrants, education, and others. At this point, what I'm going to do is just allow my panelists to introduce themselves, and we'll get started, and then I'm going to go through the document and invite our panelists to talk about that. Deb Stetler, our voter services member from the League, is going to start us off once everybody's done their introductions, talking about the services that the League has provided to the Latino community in our county. So let's start off with the introductions. And Deb?
Hello. Okay. I'm Deb Stetler. I'm on the leadership team for our local League of Women Voters, and I'm the coordinator for our Voter Services Committee, and I've held that position for about 2 years.
Hello, my name is Jose Luis Chavez. I wear a couple of different hats. One, I'm the chairperson of the Cecil Chavez Celebration Committee. We're having our 9th annual celebration on the 30th of this month at Las Colonias. I am also the chair of the Western Slope Native Resource Center. And lastly, I was just elected in November as school board director, District A.
Hi everybody. Before I introduce myself, I want to point out that we have an interpreter in the back and remind our panelists to speak slower for interpretation to be possible. It is very important for all of us to welcome everybody from different languages and different cultures, and creating a space that it really it's aware of having different culture is really important for us. So once you have an opportunity to speak, remember that there is somebody that is going to be interpreting for you. I wanted to remind everybody.
Thank you, and if I may, Ruben Pacheco is in the back. Si hay algún hispanohablante que prefiere escuchar esto en español, Ruben está aquí dispuesto. La Liga se dispone de apoyar lo que Nelly acaba de mencionar, y no sé si Hector, Ruben quiere decir algo más al público.
Hi everyone, my name is Ruben. I'm the interpreter for tonight. So I'll be interpreting from English to Spanish, if anybody wants to be interpreted. Also, I just want to remind that Spanish is 30% longer than English, so be patient, as well as the speakers to speak slower. But also, if you see me in the back talking, I'm not talking on my cell phone, I'm not talking to someone else. Just a reminder that I'm interpreting for those who don't know the names. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Ruben. I am Nelly Garcia. I'm currently the director of La Plaza, formerly Child Migrant Services. However, today I am representing myself, my background, work that I've done in the community. Everything that I'm going to be saying is going to be my personal opinion. I just wanted to do my disclaimer that I need to do. For me to be able to participate. So yeah, I've been working in the community for a long time. I previously worked at the school district with the migrant education program. I also worked for the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition as the regional slope organizer. And we've been doing a lot of work with our immigrant and migrant community for the past 20 years. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be surrounded by this amazing people here that we don't get to see each other often. So I'm pretty happy to see you all, and yeah, thank you for coming.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight, this evening. My name is Torres. I also need to make a disclaimer. I do work for Migrant Education Program, West Central Region, but tonight I'm just representing myself as a social worker who works with agricultural migratory populations. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here again.
Hi, my name is Hector Paniagua Morales. I'm the editor and publisher of Entérate Latino, the Spanish-English newspaper. It's been printed for the last 11 years, distributes in 5 counties around Mason County and other places around western Colorado. And I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for Tom and the League of Women Voters for organizing this event. I think it's very important, so thank you.
What I'm going to do now, I'm going to describe the poll to you. Again, this is the Colorado Latino Political Agenda. Oh, forgive me, I'm blanking on the name of it. Policy Agenda, thank you. So the BSP Research, a national firm with 20 plus years of helping community-based organizations research a diversifying United States, fielded a nonpartisan statewide poll of 1,600 Latino registered voters in Colorado, focusing on their issue priorities, policy preferences, and political values. The poll was conducted from July 1 to July 27, 2023 in both English and Spanish. The margin of error was plus or minus 2.4%. The poll was designed to oversample in rural areas to provide the opportunity to compare results across 4 main geographical regions of the state and congressional districts when possible. Relatively small population density across some districts led to fewer than 100 completed interviews, especially in Congressional District 5, 6, and 7. Dr. Gabriel Sanchez and Dr. Matt Barrento led the development of the survey instrument, administered the poll, and analyzed the results. The report also makes references to 2021 and 2022 results of the Colorado Latino Policy Agenda polls. Okay, now I'm going to invite Deb to discuss the voter services outreach and activities that we all conducted and you led during the last year.
Great. Well, thank you all for being here. This is such an important topic, and I really hope that our program this evening will lead to some ongoing conversations between ourselves, the League, and members of our Latino community. So I appreciate you being here. Before I begin, I'd like to define some words that I'm going to be using tonight. The first is translation. Translation means changing something written from one language to another. That's different than interpretation. Interpretation means changing something written in one language to speech in another language. So translation is what you read, and interpretation is what you hear. The other term that I want to make sure you understand is ballot measures. So what does ballot measures mean? Vote on them. These possible laws that could become a real law are called ballot measures, or sometimes ballot issues. So in 2023, there was a ballot measure to increase how long some elected officials can stay in office. It didn't pass, so there was no change in how long these officials could stay in office. So I hope that makes some of the terms that I use in specific ways make sense. So as you might have guessed from the fact that we're having this program, promoting voting in the Latino community is a priority for our local league. That's partly because the population of Mesa County is 15% Latino, but also because of the results of a survey that we conducted in 2022 at 2 community events that were specifically likely to have Latino attendees. That was the Cesar Chavez celebration and the Hispanic Resource Fair at the library. We learned through this survey that there is interest in Spanish language materials for elections and voting in Mesa County. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about that so you understand the things that we chose to do. One of the things that we learned from the survey was that almost half of our 47 people who answered the survey, and the survey was in Spanish and it was written, so you had to be someone who was familiar with using Spanish. We learned that almost half of those people prefer to read about candidates and issues in Spanish. We also learned that about half of those 47 people prefer either Spanish translation or Spanish interpretation when they're voting their ballot. And this last thing I think is just so impressive, quite amazing really. 44 of those 47 people know one or more folks who would prefer to use a Spanish translated ballot. So all of these things informed our decision to try to provide voting and election resources in Spanish for the 2023 election. So we concentrated on 3 areas: explaining ballot issues, sample ballots in Spanish, and promoting the Colorado Secretary of State's Language Assistance Line. And there'll be more about what that is later. So first, regarding ballot measures. We provided ballot measure education in print and online. So our print version was a ballot booklet that we distributed in various locations around Mesa County. And Jan is going to pass out a few throughout the audience that you guys can pass around so you sort of see what it was we did. So the ballot issue booklet in Spanish explained the issues that voters would be voting on and what a yes or no vote on each issue would mean. We distributed these to various locations, and this was a pretty successful effort. This was actually our most successful effort. I don't know if I should talk about the less successful ones first and then end with a bang, or keep you engaged by telling you about success, and then you'll be excited about listening to the rest of it. But this was pretty successful. We had almost 200 people pick up those Spanish language ballots, and the locations that were most successful were food banks, libraries, and Marillac Clinic. So we found that those were all good locations for providing information, but we would love to hear ideas about other locations as well. We also posted these booklets on our website and provided a link to them on vote411.org. For those of you who aren't familiar, Vote 411 is the National League's one-stop website for voting and election information. Unfortunately, though, here, we did not see any increase in our own website traffic, indicating that people were either not seeing it on Vote 411 or just kind of weren't making the jump to another website to try to get some more information. But you know, even though it was somewhat discouraging, this was a first-time effort, and we hope that in the future, with more publicity, this sort of thing will be helpful. Next, I want to talk about our Spanish language sample ballot efforts. Since our survey showed us that there was an interest in Spanish language ballots, and since the Mesa County Elections Division is not required to provide Spanish language ballots, we did work with them, and they were able to provide Spanish language sample ballots, which they posted on their website for the first time in 2023. And so our role there was to encourage that, but also to try to promote it and advertise it. So we advertised that effort with a radio campaign on La Jefa, the Spanish language radio station. And we also had a link to the sample ballots, the Spanish sample ballots, on our own website. This got about the same kind of response as that last effort. Engagement with the sample ballots was really low. Again, we hope that that's because this is a brand new concept and we have to figure out a way to get this information to the people who want it. At the Mesa County website, there were only 13 users and 15 views. So I'm glad there were 13 people there. It'd be nice if there were more. And again, we did not see any increased traffic on our website. And our last effort was promoting the Colorado Secretary of State's Language Assistance Line. This is a line that provides language interpretation, that is spoken reading of a ballot over the phone to a voter who calls and requests this service. Our survey suggested a need for some promotion because only 8 of our 47 people who responded were aware of its existence. So definitely not a concept in the community. So we took out a medium-sized ad in Entérate Latino, Hector's publication, which is the Western Slope Spanish language newspaper. And I'll just show that to you. So this is the newspaper, and here's the newspaper, and the ad is in the lower right quadrant. So it's a pretty big ad. It was, a quarter of a page.
It was only published once, and Hector and I have had a conversation since then, and Hector was like, yeah, once isn't gonna do it. If you want people to really see this, you just have to repeat it. So that's lesson learned. The paper does come out monthly, so I can see that there would be a need to really be very consistent if you wanted this to kind of enter into people's memory bank about voting. But this was not a terribly successful promotion either. Perhaps because it didn't happen frequently enough, but the Mesa County Elections Office tells us that actually no one has ever used the dedicated language translation line at voter services polling centers in the 2 years that it's been available. So that's 0. And the Secretary of State's office says that there were fewer than 10 users across the state for each of the 2 years that it's been available. So we realize that it's early days in terms of engaging with the Latino community regarding voting in elections. But in planning future efforts, we hope to learn from and work with partners in the community, so the community members feel informed and confident about elections and voting. All right.
Thank you, Deb. I did want to point out, when we had our conversation with Bobby.
Oh, gross.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the surprising facts we had was there are no certified translators in Mesa County, and that they needed to go to a neighboring county to get the documents translated.
Yeah, Bobby did say that, and actually Jan and I learned something interesting in that regard when we attended the recent language justice training that Western Colorado Alliance put on, which is that actually there's not really an official certification for translating ballots anyway. There's only 2 professional certification types. One is for medical translation and one is for legal, as in courtroom translation. So the whole issue of how do you provide materials in the Spanish or any other language that are culturally appropriate and understandable to people from different regions, different dialects, different histories is super complex and something that really requires a lot of thought in terms of making sure that you're reaching people in a way that they can understand it.
Okay. We do have the American Translators Association, and they might take exception to that, but let's move on. So the surprising results from our survey, and we've got this here from page 7. I just wanted to kind of summarize this, but I think it's important to note how it dispels a lot of the myths about our neighbors. So 34%, more than a third of Latinos in Colorado say they cannot afford or can barely afford where they live. And they also say improving wages and income is also seen as a top priority at both federal and state levels, as is a lack of affordable and attainable housing. At the local and national level, 4 of the top 6 most important issues identified by Latino voters for elected officials to prioritize relate to economic concerns with addressing the cost of living and inflation, and topping the list for Congress and the president, as well as the governor and the state legislature. Number 3, homelessness this year emerged as a 3rd-ranked priority for state officials as per the Latino community. And finally, lowering healthcare costs is a top 4 priority at both the state and federal levels. 52% of Latinos support for protecting women's reproductive health and abortion rights in Colorado remain strong. And finally, 81% of the Latino voters feel that addressing gun violence and mass shootings also remains a top priority. So I'd like to, having done that kind of list of issues, I'd like to go through our panelists, and Deb, you've already had your opportunity, so I guess we can start with, okay, Hector. Would you pass?
Thank you. I just wanted to say, our newspaper has been highly successful for the last almost 12 years. We do know that we reach out to about 86 to 90,000 Latinos in all Western Colorado. So I just wanted to clarify that the people that advertise do get results in our paper. You know, okay.
So sorry, no offense intended or implied.
Okay, so again, referring to the list of issues that we just talked about, is there anything that stands out from our list of panelists that they would like to comment upon?
I think there's a lot of issues that are up there. I think there's not enough healthcare for the Latino community in Mesa County. One, it's difficult to find doctors who are bilingual. So we see parents taking their children in to the doctors, and then they're translating what the doctor is saying. That is not a good position to put your child in if it's something that's really harmful. I think we need to do something different than that. There's mental health issues that we have within the Latino community, and once again, trying to find a therapist that's culturally sensitive and is also bilingual is very difficult to find in Mesa County. I am part of the Clifton community, and we have Clifton community leaders, and one of our issues we have is healthcare, trying to get people to come in to help our youth that are having mental health issues, trying to find some grant money to bring somebody in that would see them on a weekly basis to be able to visit with them and work out some of the historical or even the trauma that they're having currently. The Latino community is pretty tight at times, so they don't want to necessarily talk to somebody else in their neighborhood, because then it goes all over the rest of the neighborhood. So they hold a lot of stuff in, and there is issues that are domestic violence, mental health. There's youth that have disabilities within their schools. It is difficult for them to get any type of assistance with any type of disabilities that they may have. And I think somehow we have to be able to change that. Especially if you look at our community, we're having more of our community that are 60 plus going up. So when you're looking at that and you're looking at people that are in need of health care, those are the ones that are going to really need health care. And we don't have service providers that are able to provide the health care for them. Then we look at Latinos that are part of the LGBTQ community. Finding somebody that's going to accept them in healthcare is a totally different world, and it's even harder for them. And we look at suicides. One of the highest rates of suicide in our country are people that are of color that are LGBTQ. But yet we don't have all those services here in Mesa County, and that's something that we sort of need to change.
I'll speak a little bit about the cost of living affecting Hispanic and Black and brown folks in the community. It's kind of just a ripple effect where the cost of living requires both parents and even the children to start working and start paying their own end of the deal. And unfortunately, it's led to an increased rate of homelessness. And you can see, the population of houseless individuals, physically, the ones who are in tents, the ones who are on underpasses and stuff like that. But houselessness, homelessness is also the two families sharing one trailer, or it's the bunked up students all living together in just the housing because they couldn't afford it. It goes much more beyond that, and it just turns into this snowball effect of issues that continuously affect them. And at the end of the day, it's just a hierarchy of needs. They don't have a home, they don't have a place to stay, they don't have a sanctuary to come back to. It's just this ever-growing snowball of effects that you gotta start there. You gotta start at the very beginning with the bare necessities, or else we can't even reach to the other parts, the other things that they need support with. Whether that's education, whether that's finances, whether that's anything else. You gotta have those things at the base first.
And I don't know if this is in there. I mean, I read that. A very, very good job, by the way, very interesting. But I wanted to make emphasis on the cultural barrier that exists between the Latino community, not just Latino, but specifically immigrant, Spanish-speaking community, and the English-speaking community. It's a barrier, and it's more than cultural. A lot of people, the trust issue, a lot of people just don't trust the services. They don't trust. They have to be able to trust organizations, services, for them to access that service. Here in Western Colorado, unfortunately, I've heard it from a lot of Spanish speakers, they don't feel welcome. They feel rejected because they speak Spanish. Of course, I'm not speaking that everyone is, but a lot of folks have told me. One guy told me that he does construction, and he told me that some other guys speaking English would throw empty beer cans at him all the time and say, "Get out of my country." So there is the trust issue and this factor of acceptance that a lot of immigrants do not feel as accepted as they should.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna move on to the section of economy on page 9 if you have your document. Quick summary, some of the standouts. 61% of respondents reporting that they currently have less than $1,000 in emergency savings, 61%. 77% of Latino registered voters support increasing the minimum wage across the state so that working residents have access to jobs that pay living wages. Residents of the Western region are particularly supportive of this. 87% of them are suggesting that. And by the way, Boulder raised their minimum wage to $15.60, I think. It can be done, right? And finally, percentages of registered Latino voters think that the federal poverty level of $31,000 for a family of 4 is too low where they live. We've touched on some of this. I wondered if anybody wanted to elaborate on those statistics. If not, Nelly's mulling it over. Okay, housing. We already did talk about that, but I will mention for 70% are in favor of every policy action included in the survey aimed at reducing housing costs and making housing more accessible. Among them, 85% of Latino voters agree that cities and towns should be required to build more affordable housing near jobs, schools, and public services, and 81% support the suggestion that the state take actions to make sure that cities and towns are building more affordable types of housing.
There's a lot of culture that plays a big role in the issues that we as Latinos face. Like Hector was saying, the understanding of homelessness. There will be a lot of situations where we see 2 families living together, 3 families living together, and they don't see themselves as homeless because they have a support system. So therefore, they're not categorized as homeless, and therefore they're not going to receive the benefits of a homeless. Or in what I mean by going to services or reaching to services specifically designed for homeless, because they don't see themselves as homeless. So those things like that play a big role in our community. Education plays a big role in our community. How the higher grade of education really plays a role into how do we help the children, or how do we teach our children to be involved in politics, for example. What's the understanding of low-income housing, right? Do we qualify for that? How do we reach out for that? And then obviously language, big role. If we don't, language is a big obstacle most of the times. And then now we know that we have mixed status families. We have kids that are citizens, kids that are not documented in one household. So that plays a big role of the different participation of every kid into specific activities. Like, do they get involved in sports? They might not be able to get involved in sports because they can't travel, for example. So there's a lot of things that play a big role for our community, I think, and then that's why we get impacted in those areas the most. I wanted to point out, like, COVID had the biggest hit in our minorities because they were not able to reach out to services, connecting via call or text, or just having a connection, having an internet at home. There are still families who are not able to access those services, and not even in their language, native language. And then when we talk about interpreting and translation in most of the services, we know that in Mesa County, every single service doesn't have a Spanish speaker. And of course, there are different organizations that are taking a very important role. I thank you for that, for thinking of how can we reach them. And that's a change in mindset, right? How can we reach them instead of saying, we're just gonna do it in Spanish and we're gonna put it out there and hopefully they'll get it, right? It's more than that. Our community thinks differently. Our community are individual contacts, our word of mouth. The neighbor telling the other neighbor, you know what, this really worked for me. This really helped my family. And then they go and reach that service. But you have to go talk to this person that is gonna understand you, that it's probably somebody that speaks Spanish, but also culturally competent. What I mean by that is that they understand their culture, they understand where they're coming from. They're not trying to meet people, they're going to where they are. Meeting people and understanding people. It's really hard sometimes for us as human beings. I think it's our nature, right? We want to just get the work done. Let's get it done. And then count one more number that we helped. But are we truly digging deep and understanding, okay, am I only doing a little Band-Aid and what the need is, or am I truly helping them to be better off and understanding the systems? So I think it's a system issue, and there are like bigger thinking that we need to do in order to understand, well, why is the economy is a big thing. When we think about the priorities, the needs, right? We need to be able to bring income to the house. That's going to be the priority. I'm not going to worry about who gets into office. I'm not going to worry about if my student is having the right education. I just want to bring food to the table. So they're going to prioritize working and working and working. How do we build equity? How do we remove obstacles so that we can have a bigger access to everything that they need to know about and everything that they need to be participants of? I think
mentioned it too much.
No, you're good.
I would like to say a couple of things. One, if you look at the Latino communities, at one time in Mesa County, we were pretty solid in certain areas. And then the city and the county did some gentrification of Latinos communities and basically moved them out. You used to see a concentration of Latinos on 9th Street and Kimball around that area. You don't see hardly any of us there. Then you look at Riverside, look at everything at how Riverside is changing. A lot of them are being moved out, a lot. And so then you have across from Riverside, the Pozo, that area soon, that's going to be next. So you see the highest concentration of Latinos are in Clifton. If you look at Clifton, if you look at the basic part of Clifton, the average income is between $32,000 to $35,000 a year. That's not very much for a whole family that you have to be able to do everything that you want to do with them. Now, if you look at housing within Clifton, when you look at affordable housing, then they say, well, if we're going to build, the housing authority says, I want to build a bunch of condominiums and apartments and get that all going for people to live in. And then they look at the whole income level of Clifton. So it goes from all the way Clifton, almost all the way next to Palisade. There's some people have income that's very high, so it raises up to about $65,000 a year. So then the rental goes up. So the people that are only 32 to 35 still cannot afford the income. But that's how systems are working. And they say, well, we have to look at every place, the whole part of Clifton, instead of where the meat of Clifton is residing, that people can't live there. And then you look at environment of Clifton. There's a highway comes this way, highway comes down, and highway comes on the other side. They have the highest rate of heart disease, respiratory disease, anxiety, Alzheimer's. They live 10 years less than anybody else in Mesa County. That is Clifton. And people do not recognize that. So when we're looking at the environment of all the cars that are going up and down around Clifton, and we see why people that are poor, that have trouble being able to go see a doctor because they have respiratory diseases, it's that environment that's causing those. And we're not doing anything to slow that down. And then the people that live, all individuals that live in Clifton, have difficulties trying to find doctors that they could afford. And it's real hard if you're just working at McDonald's and only getting even $15 an hour to be able to go see a specialist for you have a respiratory disease and trying to get all the medication that you have to do. So you have to choose, do I get medication or do I get food? And do I pay for gas? What am I taking away from that? And people have to realize that that's what's going on in those areas that are with marginalized groups. And that is really concerning. And I believe we can think upstream and try to figure out ways to change that. We could put, going down 32 road, we can put bumps on the road so the traffic's not so fast. We have children that are on the east side of 32 road, wants to cross 32 road and wants to go to the convenience store. So they're, show you my age, they're playing Frogger trying to cross between cars. And it's sad to me that I'm thinking the only way that it's going to change if a child gets hit and dies, and then the state will say, since it's a state highway, then they'll say, okay, we have to do something. We'll put a bridge going over, a walk over, or we'll put those lights that are by CMU, hit it, so a person can hit that and then cross in the middle. They're not going to walk half a mile down to the next block to cross. That's not realistic, and I know they say, well, we can do, that's what they can do, but you're a child, that is not a realistic thing. You're just going to go, okay, I can get a soda and a candy bar over there on the cross, and you're going to make a run for it, and you're not watching. And when you're going over the viaduct part, you're hitting 45, 50 miles an hour. You're not going to be able to stop in time, so you're going to hit somebody. So it's just a dangerous place to live, and I don't think our government, people that are in power, realize all of those situations, and they have to change that. And I think it comes from grassroots community members that are going to be able to talk and stand up for people and say, this is what the issue is, and we want you to make changes. Because sometimes the only voices you hear are community voices, and people have to rally behind them so that changes will happen.
Thank you, Solis, for that. That's very, very interesting. I also wanted to point out that without the Latino population, the most vulnerable group are the undocumented. Because America to point out that without the Latino population, the most vulnerable group are the undocumented. Because American-born Latinos, whatever happens, they speak the language and you can't send them back, right? The undocumented, they don't speak the language, they have even more struggle, they face even more barriers because of the language and the status. A lot of people are adjusting status or whatever, and they're not citizens. They don't even have a permit, so they live in fear. So this group of sorry, you had something.
No.
This group of Latinos within the Latino population, the undocumented, are the most vulnerable group.
Thank you. I wanted to go to the next section here, and many of the topics that we're dealing with here are coming up and they've been addressed by the survey. So let's go to education. 77% of the surveyed individuals believe that education needs improvement. That's a quote from the survey. 76% believe that school board members are more focused on imposing their political agenda. That's not you, Jose. 67% that staffs. I wanted to go to the next section here, and many of the topics that we're dealing with here are coming up and they've been addressed by the survey. So let's go to education. 77% of the surveyed individuals believe that education needs improvement. That's a quote from the survey. 76% believe that school board members are more focused on imposing their political agenda. That's not you, Jose. 67% that school staff lack diversity. 71% are concerned with their ability to prepare themselves or their children for college. And 74% are concerned about banning books that discuss historical events like slavery or Chicano rights movement. And I invite y'all to discuss any of this part.
I just want to say the struggle's real.
The struggle's real.
Struggle's real. Yeah, I think I agree with that data.
I don't know if you're going to show it, but one of the part of the survey shows the participation in the Western Slope. Out of the, what was the number that you showed?
1,600.
1,600. The survey got responses, 496 responses of the Western Slope. Interesting, right? We are the second highest in responding. The first area was the Denver metro area with 551. And then us, though, aren't you surprised? We participated.
Yeah.
496. Then it goes to southeast for 303, and then northeast with 250. Why I mention in this is because we know that the Western Slope, or all the counties outside Denver metro area, get less funding for education, right? And I'm sure that you know that the state counts the number of students, and then that's how they calculate how much funding each school district gets. A school district does that counting in October. They call it October count. And if you remember, we were not getting as many migrants in October. All the migration started to happen in January through now.
Are we talking about the agricultural workers?
I'm talking about just general migration and how it is affecting our education system. Follow me.
Okay.
I know I talk a lot, and then you're like, oh, that's why she was saying that. So, therefore, the school district received their money in like December, January, and now they're struggling with all the students that are coming in. So that's just one example of how the education system works and why it impacts us as Latinos, and it impacts everything that is happening, right? We have crisis, migration goes up and down, and that's just historical. That's gonna continue no matter what we do, even like we like it or not. It's just gonna keep happening, right? That's our right to move and find a better life, because we want the best for our families. So no matter what opinion is out there, and I'm sorry if it contradicts what you believe, but it's gonna happen. It'll happen. And that is just like how we see that it's gonna keep affecting our systems. So the school district right now doesn't have enough money to support all the students that are right now, and like they're trying to get educated. And then add to the Western Slope that we don't have that much funding anyways. It always happens. The Denver area gets more funding than any other school district. Why? Do you have an idea why?
We'll have an opportunity for questions later.
I know you know the answer, but it's about numbers. So it's really important to look at why our education doesn't work. And yes, then we don't have money, so therefore we cannot hire teachers that represent the population. We don't have money, so therefore our education is not going to represent what our community is wanting to learn or needing to learn, right? And thankfully we have today representation in our school board. And that's being, can I give a round of applause to for bringing finally representation, because it's a big deal. This is new, right? This never happened. I don't know if it happened in the past, but as far as that, I've been here 20 years and I never seen that. And that's really important. So speaking up and bringing those voices to the table and supporting them, right? He received the right support for representation. Like that's thanks to you that you are able to vote. So that's how we make the changes into the systemic problems that we have today.
I'm gonna give a disclaimer that this is my viewpoint, not necessarily school board or D51. Regarding education, I believe that part of the issues that we have is sometimes we don't give the youth enough options regarding on how to graduate and what to do. We're being more restrictive regarding curriculum and provide options for our youth to build so that they can do something different and learn. Not all of our youth are going to go to college. Some are going to go to trade school. And if we don't have people who know trades, our system stops. You need plumbers, you need mechanics, you need electricians, you need people who build houses, you need food service, people who can cook so that you don't have to always eat at your house. So those type of things we need to provide options for them. The other thing is that we also need to provide our youth. I'm a retired juvenile parole officer. And one of the issues that my juveniles had was personal finance. They were in debt because they couldn't realize where they were spending their money. And somewhere along the line, we have to be able to provide our youth, not just for a quarter of personal finance, but maybe make it independently, that they are going to learn about personal finance. There's a gentleman at one of our high schools that teaches personal finance, and I was speaking to him the other day, and he says that he gave his students a little notebook, and they had it for a quarter, write down everything that they spent their money in for a month, every place that they spent their money in, just to write it down, so they could see where the money was going. They were spending on sodas, snacks, a sandwich here and there, between $300 to $400 a month. That is a lot of money. Personal finance. That's why we have troubles when our youth are going and getting out of high school and they're trying to buy a car. They're trying to go to college and they get all these loans and then they don't know what to do with the loans and then they spend them. Then they drop out of school and they're going, now what do I do? Well, you still have to pay back your loans and they don't know how to do that. And then when you look at the amount of income that they are earning, because the teacher said when he had his students look at areas throughout the United States of where they would like to live, with the income that they would be earning, they found out that the only thing that they could affordably rent was a room. Not an apartment, not a house, but a room. And hopefully they could afford that, but that was about it. That is concerning. So we have to show people personal finance so that they can do well. But there's a lot of adults that don't do well in personal finance, that are in debt and they don't know how to get out of it. When I used to show a lot of my clients, if you put in $100 a month and then I would show them what you did in 30 years, like, you don't have $1 million something? Yeah, that's a lot of money. And they go, I didn't even think about that. They don't know how to do a budget. We have to show people how to do budget. Those type of things are really important. And regarding education, the other part I believe that we sort of need is when we are speaking with people of different languages, they could be fluent in English, but when they're in a biology class or psychology class and those upper levels of classes, they don't understand some of the content. And if we had somebody that would teach them in English, from English to Spanish, that would make sense to them, it would be a lot easier and they'd be more successful. The youth that I have spoke to that are at CMU that have left, that we have tried to mentor, the reason that they said that they quit is that they couldn't keep up with the content because they did not understand it and there was no tutors in that content that would be able to speak their language to help them so that they could pass. So they gave up. And that is a sad thing that they gave up because they gave up on themselves and the system didn't do anything to try to help them. So those are things that we have to do. There's also, our district, I believe that we have to provide services for all of our children, not just the tier 4 schools that have a huge amount of children in there, but we have to provide services for all children in all schools. Just because you're a tier 4 and you have 400 or 500 students in there, and then you're a school that you only have 300, same services, same amount of time should be given to that tier 4 to that tier 2 or 3 level. It should not change anything. They should still have therapists there. They should have some type of behavioral person. They should have counselors, behavioral health, teacher aides, reading specialists, everything they should have that any other school has. We don't have that. We are lacking in, and Nelly is correct, we are lacking in money. Our school district does not have enough money because of the way that the state of Colorado formula that they have, we lost almost $250 million in quite a few years, and we're not getting back. We're not going to get back. And when the governor says we are funding your school to the original what we were supposed to do, it's the original amount of 2019. It isn't what we need now. We're still lacking, and that's something that we have to take a look at. And so when we, as a school district, when we're looking at mill levies and bond issues, we need help from community members. Because if you look at it, what we're doing is trying to help our children grow and have a positive environment so that they can grow and they can do what they need to do. Without community's help to support that so we can pay teachers a living wage, because the majority of teachers are not being paid a living wage. I don't believe that. So we need to pay them a living wage. We need to support them. If we keep on looking at the declining enrollment that we are having, that's hurting us. It is dropping, so we're not getting as much funding as we were supposed to. You look at the school conditions, the buildings, they're not the best, they're old schools. So we're gonna have to fix some old schools so that our students have a good place to go each day. We need to thank people that are within our school district. Our teachers, our custodians. Our custodians are the first people. They do all the groundwork for everybody comes in that says their school is looking really well. It's the custodians that keep it all clean and clean up after teachers, after kids, day and night, and they are doing that work. We have to thank them because they don't get paid very well at all. So we have to make those type of changes. How do we get money so that we can pay a living wage from food service to custodian to teachers? And our main customers is not, I believe, parents and community. Our main customers is our children that we are working with. And our board, or any board for the school district, should never ever be political. Our decisions should always be based in the best interest of children, not on what my affiliation is. That should not even come to the table, and we have to realize that. I do believe that there's a lot of good people within our school district. That sometimes in any business that's large, sometimes communication isn't the best, and we have to get better at communicating. We also need to take a look at, once again, upstream thinking. How do we resolve issues so that 5 years down the road we're not going to have those issues anymore? And we have to bring people to the table. And it just cannot just be administrators. It has to be teachers. We have to listen to teachers, and we have to listen to youth coming in and talking to us, saying, this is the challenges that I have at my school. Who I am, what I am, and this is what I need help with. So that we can actually hear those things, and then we can problem solve so we can help them grow. Because those are what our concerns are. If our children do not get the education that they need, the economic of our community is going to fail, because they're going to be our leaders. So they have to have a good, solid base, and we have to get them to like themselves. The bullying stuff that we have in our schools, the high rate of suicides that we have, all that, we have to make it sure that it's a decline and it doesn't continue to increase if we're going to do right by our students. And that's what our community should look at. When a mill levy comes up or any of those things come up, look at how is that going to affect a child if we don't do that. Because we have free preschool, the lunch program is going well. We do all those things, but there's still in needs of different things. And you look at what teachers bring to the table when they're in school. You're teaching 30 kids, sometimes 25, 30 kids in your classroom, and they're somebody that could read only in 1st or 3rd grade, and then you have a child that's reading in 12th grade, and you have to be able to do that balance back and forth. Our teachers are not even close to what they should be and what they deserve, but they have to handle that. But if we have more finances, maybe we can drop that teacher to student ratio down a bit so that our teachers have a better time, and with their ability that they have, that they can be able to help our children grow a little bit more than what they are currently doing, because they are locked into something that they really can do. And you're looking at everything that is asked of teachers. It's amazing what they have to do. They'll have a planning time, and then sometimes the planning time, the principal will say, hey, we need to meet, I'm going to have a meeting, so that takes planning time away. And then they have to do all their grading. Where do they do their grading? They do it at home. So
Okay,
they can work it.
we have other issues, but a lot of important insights. We're almost out of time, and I just wanted to touch on one of the comments that came up earlier, climate and the environment. 80% believe that vulnerable communities directly impacted by pollution get additional environmental protections, and also a strong interest in the lack of information about how to reduce their carbon footprint, how to buy an electric vehicle, how to buy efficient appliances. So I'd also like to point out, Well, I guess it goes without saying, the concern about fear of political violence being targets of mass shootings. We should remember Uvalde, we should remember El Paso. Those were shootings that targeted the Latino community, and those are only two that come to mind. Also, we wanted to point out some of the areas, especially Congressional District 3. The survey also reflected that, and I strongly encourage you guys to go and read this document. But some of the issues that District 3 mentioned included they're less likely to be reached out to ask their thoughts about politics or policy in the state. That's what voters from District 3, Congressional District 3 said. Also, that Congress should pass a law to provide a pathway to citizenship for Dreamers and DACA, and also that Biden should issue an executive order to stop deporting undocumented immigrants who have not committed a crime and who are working. And so those are some of the highlights that District 3 talked about. The West region now, which is going to be talked about from the standout issues, federally addressing the rising cost of living and inflation is something that the West region is concerned about. Congress should pass a law to provide pathway to citizenship is another thing that the West region talked about. The federal government should do more to support undocumented immigrants who have lived, worked, and paid taxes in the U.S. for most of their lives. President Biden should issue an executive order to stop deporting undocumented immigrants who have not committed crimes. And finally, 14% are less likely to support a candidate that opposes legislation to support immigrants. And those are some of the highlights of this important document. And I think we should all read it and gain some insights. Now we have an opportunity to ask questions of our panel, and I invite any of you to just raise your hand, and we are going to need to get a mic to you.